exist in both paradigms. And we think that that's what side opposition has ignored throughout all three speakers today. They think that just because you ban chemical weapons, they'll magically disappear from the face of Earth. But we ask the question, right, if these conventions against chemical weapons really work, why do we see Syria using them? Why do we see Iraq using them? We don't think that they have the answer to that. So three clashes in today's debate. Firstly, on the nature of chemical weapons. Secondly, on leveling the playing field. And thirdly, on regulation. Firstly, on the nature of chemical weapons. So today, the other side sometimes argue that chemical weapons are very devastating and destructive, and sometimes argue they don't cause enough harm to actually have a sort of MAD situation. So we say that throughout the debate, in either case, if they don't cause harm or they do cause harm, we think that we win the debate on both contexts. So firstly, if they don't cause harm. So if they really don't cause harm, and they told us that chemical weapons are not as harmful because countries will not be deterred from using them if other countries have them, because nerve gas kills in a humane way and things like that. So we think that if that's really the case, right, then whatever line they draw will be an arbitrary line, and if they want to ban chemical weapons, they should ban all weapons altogether. So we think that if it's the case that chemical weapons don't cause any sort of exclusive harm, we think that there's no good reason to ban chemical weapons. Then more realistically, right, they do cause harm, right? Chemical weapons are destructive and they are terrifying and dangerous. And we think that on this ground, they brought to us the idea that because chemical weapons are so devastating, they'll be used against civilians and there's a harm to humanity there. So we think that that's not applicable, as my third speaker and myself told you about how this is not applicable because of the fact that today the context of the debate is during wartime situations and both sides, our side ultimately also does not condone the use of chemical weapons on innocent civilians. So we think that that's not a reason to ban chemical weapons. Then, so our side told you that rogue states will always use these chemical weapons to cause harm, inflict harm upon other countries, upon their own people. Everything that we already told you the only way to deter them is to use chemical weapons, is to possess chemical weapons so that you keep them in check, so that they will not dare to use chemical weapons. And they told us that this deterrence cannot happen because war is already ongoing. But we have never said that this deterrence is against war. We said that this deterrence is against using chemical weapons. So we think that the deterrence point still stands at the end of the day, and we think that it's very for that alone we take the debate. But moving on to the next clash about leveling the playing field. So two gaps, two disparities in power that our side attempts to bridge today. Firstly, richer countries versus poorer countries, and secondly, states with chemical weapons and states without. So on the first disparity from richer and poorer countries, right? So we told you that richer countries will always have a monopoly on these conventional weapons, and poorer countries will become more vulnerable as a result of that. And they never really dealt with that until the third speaker, which is quite late, and told us that the disparity will always exist, and because richer countries can buy more expensive chemical weapons. But we already told you that chemical weapons are cheap and easy to manufacture, even to the higher end, with things such as sarin gas, that Syria is able to afford them. And we think that we think that on our side we better bridge the gap between these poorer and richer countries, and we better leave the other side leave these poor states at the mercy of these more richer states. Now moving on to the next gap about between states with chemical weapons and states without, right? So we told you that we need to preserve the principle of autonomy so that these all countries can have a second strike capability to retaliate in the case of them being attacked. So we're not saying that they will retaliate necessarily. We're saying that having chemical weapons alone will keep these countries, non-state actors, in check, and we think that that's very important. And to the last area about regulation, we brought to you the idea of a black market arising, and we say that it's especially dangerous because chemical weapons are so lethal, right? And they never really dealt with that, so that point still stands. So at the end of the day, we think that our side still better preserves IHL because we bridge the disparity between countries, and we still condemn reckless, inhumane use. Therefore, go with our side.